every decision that I make, I like to get a good enough reason behind it before I actually take action on it. That is how my brain usually processes things, and that's how I'll end up staying consistent. And so when I was struggling with lust for 7 years, mainly pornography, when I was struggling with pornography for 7 years straight, when I continued to go on streaks of 6 months and continuously going back, is because after that 6 month streak worn out, I would not have a good enough reason to go back to continue to fight and be celibate and not give in to my lustful desires. I would forget the reason why I stopped in the first place. And so I remember exactly having this conversation with God. And this is exactly how I literally speak to God. Just like casual like this. There's times where I talk like this and there's times where I'm serious. That's the best way to pray, and that's the most powerful way to I've received blessings inside of my life. That's the way I stay consistent with prayer in general. But I was talking to God, and I remember God put it on my heart. And I think I just had got finished giving into lust, and I was really convicted about it. But then I asked God, I was like, God, why me? There's so many other people out here doing the same things that I was struggling with. Even people that like loved ones that were really close to me, they were struggling with. They told me about stories about them struggling with certain things, and I'm like, okay, God, if they struggling, like, why can't I struggle with this too? Why can't I struggle with this maybe until I get married, and then I won't have to deal with pornography free anymore because boom, I won't struggle with lust. And I remember God specifically put it on my heart. He put two scenarios in my mind. Put the scenario where I continued to do what I was doing, and I continued to let lust rule over my life. And of course, maybe God would have gave grace to me and maybe allowed me to enjoy sin for a season. But there's always consequences to that. Of course, I couldn't see him in that moment, but I know that there's consequences. But he showed me another side of me actually stopping and pursuing the things he's wanting me to do, making me be set apart. He showed me that, oh, this same thing that you would be struggling with would also get passed down to generations. You would be passing down that generational curse of you struggling with lust because you had that habit. You couldn't be able to say, hey, I've overcome this at a young age. And of course, I started thinking of it from a different perspective. I'm like, dang. So there's a specific person that I am called to be. And therefore, if I choose to continue to give in this lust, I am choosing the less version of myself instead of the best version of myself. Of course, that reason carried on with me. It wasn't strong enough for me to change, but it sparked a different type of motivation in me to keep on fighting. Because I could have easily continued to give in to lust and pornography, and to the point where I just started convincing myself like this is not doing too much damage. Because honestly, when I was watching pornography, it doesn't seem like it's damaging in the moment. It just seems like you get guilty for no reason. And so therefore, I really had to get to the reason behind why I was doing it and what it was really keeping me away from. And really, you don't know that until you go long enough without it. And that's the first step that I always teach inside of my content, inside of my community, is you need to have an identity, a person that you know that you're going to become. How that person acts, how that person lives, how is his standards, what family is he gonna have in the future, what people is he gonna lead in the future? Because when you can envision that and latch onto that, it brings a different level of conviction. Like, okay, I can't stay the same. I talked about it in, I think it was a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago. I was like, when you walk into a restaurant and they have a dress code, it's a standard. You can't walk in there because you will feel out of place. But when you have an identity and you continue to give in the lust, you will feel out of place. It's not condemnation like, dang, I can't keep doing this. It's like, why am I doing this? This is not who I am. And so because of that, it carried a different level of conviction with me. When I failed, I started asking myself, okay, what led me into this? I started being aware. I stopped condemning myself, making me run away from God, but I started running to God, adding more boundaries, and started becoming more aware of what I was consuming on a day-to-day basis, what I was doing with my time. And I realized that every single time I went on the street, even if it wasn't with Christ, because there was times where I was meditating, sun gazing. I know it's demonic now. I didn't know that before, but I was trying to open up my third eye and see spirits and things like that, to know that the spiritual realm is actually real. That's the only reason I wanted to see spirits and see the spiritual realm is to be like, Hey, I know those people online who were saying, dang, I see spirits, or I encountered this spirit, I encountered Christ, and all these different things. I wanted to know for myself if this stuff is real. So if I'm sun gazing and trying to open up my third eye, I can just see it and just be like, yeah, I can confirm it. But during the time where I went on a 6 month streak, I literally remembered that I was literally focused on growing spiritually, trying to get like spiritually in tune with God. And so therefore I overcame lust because my focus wasn't on lust. It was focused on growing in a specific area. And I remember there's so many times where I would go on streaks. Times where I go on streaks. It's like maybe after that 6 month streak, like I fell and then I started going back, but then I got motivated again to maybe like start some businesses. I started focusing on getting a whole lot of jobs and focusing on working on my purpose and figuring out what I wanted to do with my life and get financial freedom, all these different types of things. My focus was so on that. I was so purpose driven to the point where I literally wasn't even thinking about lust, and lust became easy for me. I used to think it was so hard, but then there's times where I thought it was really, really easy. It's because my focus was on something that I had faith in. So a common pattern that I had that made me continue to go back into lust for 7 years over and over and over again is I would have faith in something and then I would stop having faith, lose faith in it, and then end up thinking that giving in to lust is more important, and then I would end up falling back. I would have faith in the business. I would have faith in a vision that God has instilled inside of my heart, and then lose faith in it, and then lust looks more pleasurable. It's because lust is just misplaced passion. It's misplaced faith. You start having faith in the pleasure in the moment because you think that's better for you, instead of having faith in delaying gratification and knowing that there's something on the other side that you're waiting for. And later in the word, I realized that God talks about this. He talks about being double-minded, meaning having faith in one thing, one moment, and then the next moment, he has faith in a whole nother thing. And that's where the cycle of lust continues to spiral from. That's where distractions, you can't focus on something because you're losing faith in it, and you don't really think you don't have that urgency anymore because you're losing faith in it. I promise you, if I told you that you're guaranteed to be successful if you just work on this one thing for 4 or 5 hours a day, then you would focus those 4 or 5 hours a day because you have faith and you believe. But the reason why you get distracted is because you stop believing, you stop having faith. And so the root of your disobedience, the root of you not taking action on things that God is putting on your heart is all because of faith. And why you think God talks about faith so much, that if you have the faith the size of a mustard seed, you can move mountains, because the root of all of your problems, the root of all of your decisions is faith. You have a good enough reason behind every decision that you make. You think every decision through. Even when you fall into lust, you think it through. You start convincing your mind that, oh, this is more important. I need this to feel better because I feel bad about myself. And because of all of these reasons inside of your mind, you convince yourself to have faith in the pleasure instead of faith in your purpose. And that's why the encounter with Christ changed everything. I remember when I was cutting off everything, went on a wilderness season, when I was still struggling with lust before that. I was watching a whole bunch of convicting content, watching Christian content, but a lot of things still felt the same. And so I was questioning everything. And then when I had the encounter with Christ, when I actually had the spiritual encounter with him, it was like a different level of knowing. Like before, I had faith. I believe that God was real. I believe that if I believed in Jesus, that I'll be saved, or else I wouldn't have even been trying. When I had an encounter and I seen it for myself, it brought a different level of faith that carried with me. And that's why to that day, I have not went back to pornography, because it's like I know God delivered me from pornography. So if I even thought about watching pornography again, it would bring a different level of conviction. But I also, throughout my whole journey of going back into pornography, I learned a whole bunch of things, like how watching certain TV shows can spark a certain desire and make you feel content and make you want to watch porn again. It's called feeding the flesh. The more you feed the flesh, the more that you will desire watching porn. And I remember vividly when I was going on that 6 month streak, when I said how I talked about the spiritual encounter when I was trying to open up my third eye and things like that. During the end of that 6 months, I was remember watching this show called Shameless. I was watching Shameless. It has a whole bunch of sex scenes in it, and I thought I was fine with. At first, I was fine. I watched the first few seasons. It was cool, but the more that I watched it, and the more I got comfortable watching it, it's like the enemy tricked me because what the enemy does is he gets you to have you watch something that doesn't cause you to fall, but then he gets you comfortable with that, even though you know it's a boundary. And then when that temptation hits, you don't want to stop watching it. And so therefore you end up falling. And so remembering that, becoming aware of that, I remember, okay, I got to cut off these things, even if I don't think it's affecting me. And so I cut off some secular music, any music that's talking about like R&B and things like that. I used to think it was cool, but then I started cutting it off because I'm like, dang, I might start thinking sexually because all of these different things, I've become aware of that. And then sexual movies and things like that. I realized that if it has a sex scene, it can play back in my mind and make me want to lust. So through my whole journey, I realized that if I wasn't willing to cut off those things, then God would not be even able to deliver me. And so when I was actually willing to cut off secular music, all these shows, that's when God gave me that encounter, because he knew I wanted to feed my flesh and make me want to go back to pornography. After that, once I had that encounter, 3 months later, I think 4 months later, I started YouTube because I was so convicted. I knew what I saw was true. I've been waiting for it for years. And I just started sharing my experience on Snapchat, and then it went to Instagram, YouTube, and I just started sharing my story, and then God just started using me. And this is what will happen. God will use your experience if you truly have faith and you're doing it for the right reasons. Because I was doing that just to share my story. I wanted to see my friends saved. I'm like, yo, I'm not tripping. Y'all got to take Christianity serious, because I didn't know this was real. I was just like y'all, and y'all can relate to me. And so therefore, I'm going to share my story, exactly what happened. I'm going to still hang with y'all and things like that. I got to distance myself a little bit to grow, but I'm going to still be cool with y'all because I know that what I experience is real. Y'all got to be more serious for Christ. And I wanted to share that. And so therefore, there's so many people that related to me that God was able to use that. You have to understand, God is going to use you for a specific purpose. And I remember this specific verse. It literally says that we will do more works than Jesus, because we have more opportunity to expand than Jesus. If Jesus had a phone, he would have like 10 million more views than everybody. But now that we have the opportunity to share the gospel and reach new people and different things like that, transportation is different. We have radio stations, phones, and all types of things like that. We have more opportunities to spread the gospel. So therefore, we can do more works than Jesus Christ if we allow God to move in our life. But because of fear, because of lust, because of all of these things, it's keeping you away from the purpose that God has for you. And shortly after, God has given me a woman who I literally had to leave. It was about a year after overcoming pornography, and God had blessed me with ministry. He blessed me with the social media and different things like that. And during that time, I think it was a year after, I really started to get, I want to say complacent, but I started getting burnt out in a way. And I was losing motivation more and more and more. It's because I didn't really have any inspiration. I didn't really have a vision that I was really working towards. It felt like I was just being repetitive. And that's why I always say it doesn't matter if you're working on something. It doesn't matter if you have a job. If you're continuously doing something that's repetitive, yet you don't have inspiration, you feel like there's no more room for growth. If you're at that point, that's when temptations will start to creep in. That's when the enemy will attack you. Because as soon as I started to do that, that's when I started to creep past certain boundaries. I started thinking that certain things was okay just because I went a year without giving into lust. And for a season it was, until it wasn't, and then I end up falling. Of course, there's a different level of conviction when you fall, especially after a year and you had an encounter with Christ. You know God is real, so you get that different level of conviction. But that spiraled into me doing it over and over and over again. It felt like I was literally in another cycle of pornography, just a different type of lust that I had to overcome. And this one's a little bit different because this time I wouldn't fall every single day. It would happen maybe once every month or every 2 months. But there's 2 reasons why it was happening. Number one, I didn't have inspiration. I felt burnt out. I didn't feel like reading my word by myself. I was only reading with her. So therefore, I didn't feel the need for more boundaries, and I wasn't getting as convicted as much But as God continued to draw me in, continued to convict me, there's times I literally cried about it. That's when I started implementing reading the word by myself. That's when I started implementing me pursuing being purpose driven again. And then that is when overcoming temptation became easy again. It becomes easy to overcome lust when you place your passions in the right place. You place your passions in your true priorities. That's when I started to wake up at 5 a.m. to spend time with God. And that's why I preach this to this day. You need to wake up early to spend time with God, because temptation is waiting on you throughout the day. So I started waking up before I worked, before I did anything. I woke up, prayed to God, and I read to get to know him more so I don't get complacent. Even when it didn't feel like I was growing, because I've already read the word. I've already read certain stories. I'm like, what can I get from this again? But every single time I read, I learned something new. And it got ingrained to me to the point, if I don't read this Bible every single day, it feels off. And again, once I started to do that, that's when I started to grow. My channel started to grow even more. I think I grew another like 10,000 on Instagram and started growing even like I hit 50,000 on YouTube, because I continued to use energy that God has given me to place it into the purpose that he's called for me. And this new vision that had came to mind came from me getting inside of the word, came from me praying, came from me continuously doing research, getting motivated, trying different things, pushing through fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of even success. Because yes, that's the thing, you can be scared of success. Pushing through all of these things is what allowed me to be able to get that new inspiration. I promise you, if you get to the point where you're purpose driven and you put God first, it's almost impossible to get into lust. And that's why I'm able to be even celibate now, because temptations are coming. It's normal to, it's not to be vulgar, but to get horny. It's a natural desire that God has put inside of us, but it's only supposed to be used for a specific purpose. If your purpose isn't aligned where it's supposed to be, then of course that's where lust comes in. Yes, I'm literally living testimony of the exact system that I use inside of Refined Mindset. This is how I'm able to help my clients as well. The thoughts, the feelings of wanting to give in to lust, of wanting to pass certain boundaries, avoiding the temptation before the temptation even happens. These are the certain things that I had to battle as well. So when I tell you to find your identity and really envision who you want to be, I'm not just saying that just because, oh, this is something I've seen online. That I know if you envision who you're supposed to be, you'll have a different level of conviction with you, and you will take accountability of you giving into lust. You won't think, oh, this is too hard for me, this is impossible. No, you will know that you have the ability to overcome it. You just don't want to. And then number two, the awareness stage. When I started to become aware of, okay, this certain thing is keeping me from my identity, I need to stop this. A man of God wouldn't be listening to this type of secular music. I gotta cut this off. A different level of conviction came with me, not condemnation. Conviction came with me because I knew my identity. Everything flows from your identity, who you believe that you're called to be. And then also removing and replacing. I didn't just remove all of those different things. I didn't just remove secular music. I replaced it with Christian rap. I've been listening to Christian rap for so long now because it's being ingrained into me. It has been reminding me of Christ all the time. Throughout traffic, I ain't getting impatient because I'm listening to some Christian rap. And then playing the game. That's not sin, but it was keeping me away from my purpose and the man that God was calling me to be. And so therefore, because I was distracted with the game, I wasn't solely have my full faith in my purpose. Because of that, I would continuously cycle back into temptation. And so what did I do? I cut it off and then replaced it with my purpose. And when I became purpose driven, lust no longer stood a chance. And lastly, of course, walking in your identity. That means reading the word and applying it to your life, living out his word on a day-to-day basis, waking up early to spend time with him before your day starts. Because whatever you consume the most, whatever you spend majority of your time in, whatever you spend majority of your time focusing on is what you will produce. So yes, this is the exact system tied into my story that I walk all of my clients through to help them get amazing results. Of course, if you want to be a part of this journey where you become a purposeful, purpose-driven leader, not just overcoming lust, because lust isn't something that you just overcome, it's something that you outgrow. If you want to grow into the person that God has called you to be, the leader that God has called you to be, make sure you book a call with me, but only people who are serious, ready to invest and change their lives. But don't even book a call if you're not willing to let certain things go. because I'm going to push you. There's going to be things that you're not going to want to do. And if you're not willing to surrender yet, don't even book a call. But if you are truly ready to change your life, make sure you book a call with me. I'm going to help you with nutrition, fitness, spirituality, and hopefully by the end of my program, you are becoming a leader and leading on social media as well. So I appreciate y'all for watching, and I appreciate all the support. I hope you took something from this story. Don't just watch it, actually apply it to your life, because there's so many people still struggling with lust, when in reality, all you got to do is focus on the inputs. What are you putting inside of your life? Find out what you truly are doing here, and I promise you, you'll be able to overcome it. But yeah, appreciate y'all for watching. Appreciate all the support. If you want to support, the link is also down below. If not, till next time, as usual, y'all stay blessed.